Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are watching from. This is Ubuntu channel on Meet Your Leaders tonight. And tonight we'll be looking at citizens' solidarity in the fight against corruption. And to help us do the discussion, we'll be joined by representatives from Generation Takeover. My name is Chaza, and alongside myself is Lance, who will take you on right here on the show tonight. Lance, good evening.
Good evening, Chaza. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. How's been your day, African Freedom Day?
Well, my day has been very insightful, and of course, happy African Freedom Day, or maybe Happy African Unity Day to both you and all Africans that are watching this particular broadcast. It's pretty awesome, pretty nice to be back on the program, and looking forward to have a nice deliberation with our studio guest this evening as we are looking at a very pertinent matter and issue, of course, talking about the fight against corruption. So, really looking forward to have a very nice deliberation with our studio guests, and also looking forward to our viewers that are watching us via different platforms. It may be YouTube, we are Ubuntu Channel Zambia, Facebook, Ubuntu Channel Zambia, and not forgetting on Twitter as well, it's Ubuntu Channel Zambia. So if you haven't liked, make sure that you like our page on Facebook so that you can get first-hand information, as we always strive to give you the very best of programming that we get to give you. So it's cream de la cream. Over to you, Chad.
All right, thank you so much. And as we are waiting for our guests tonight to join us live in the studio, I think I'll dive in a little bit on the same African Freedom Day. What comes into my mind when we talk about freedom of Africa and Africans is actually the personal freedom. So, Lance, how do you feel? Do you feel as an African yourself, you are a free man?
Well, I am a free man. I would say literally, because I am a strong believer and also pusher of Pan Africanism. So I would say yes, literally, I am a free man. But when we talk about economically, Africa is not free. Obviously, you know what I mean. But when we talk about African freedom, they obviously it dates me back to 1958 when the Africa Liberation Day was first celebrated. That was in Ghana, where it was constituted African Liberation Day. And then after that, in I think 1958, that was 1950, 1958, it was later changed to Africa Day. And of course, in 1963, we saw about 52 or 53 countries obviously coming together and getting to agree to say we are going to have the African Unions, moving from the Organization of African Unions, because Organization of African Union had at least about 16 countries, but when it was changed to AU, at least we had 53 countries that participated in the end. That's how we get to Africa Unity Day, as I would love to call it, because that's when Africans came together to unite and say, hey, we have to help our brothers, liberate our brothers that are still under colonial masters. So that's what Africa Day is all about to me, Chaz.
Great, and it's good to see a number of African countries, gaining their freedom from colonialism. It's just unfortunate that economic freedom takes economic muscle. So for us to really stand on our feet as Africa, we really need the economic muscle, and we hope that one day Africa will definitely be free and independent, literally and truly. All right, it appears that yeah. Please go on, Lance.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, Yes, it will take quite a lot for Africans to get to attain the economic freedom that we would so much want to have as a continent. But again, it doesn't again take so much muscle. It takes a group of people, a number of people that will agree to move this agenda to say, hey, I think it's high time that we get to push Pan Africanism. It's high time that we get to recognize one another as Africans. There's no need for us to fight one another. There's no need for a country like the Democratic Republic of Congo to have the M13 rebels. These Democratic Republican of Congo residents, they are terrorizing their fellow residents. We don't have to have the Central African Republic obviously fighting one another for the sake of the little dime which is there. We need to see an Africa that unites. We need to see a country, each and every country in Zambia, that gets to uh, put their hands together, agree on one thing and say, hey, this is the direction that we want to take. If we are to see development, if we are to see the betterment of our country, we all have to hold hands together, hold them firmly, and move into one direction so that at least each and everybody can get to benefit from that. Only then will that economic freedom come, because you will all be speaking one language, and it will be hard for somebody to come in and influence you to say, okay, we are going to give you a little something, therefore can you head this way, or we are going to arm you up with arms, therefore go to this region and cause havoc and terror. I think we will not see that if we all agree to say, let's hold hands, this is the road, let's take it, and there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. Thank you so much. And one of the factors that affecting Africa so much, I must believe, is corruption. A state that embosses corruption, it's very difficult for such a one to really become independent economically. And tonight, this is the sole reason that we are looking at the solidarity that the citizens have undertaken in the fight against corruption. So the essence of it is that we would like to see ourselves as a country win the fight, and we believe that if we can win the fight against corruption, then the economy will definitely get to survive. So tonight, like earlier alluded, we shall be joined by Generation Takeover. It's due to a technicality that they are not yet here, and we hope pretty soon they'll definitely get to join us. So as we get to wait for them, in the meantime, for now, we can actually break for a commercial. On the other side, we'll get to proceed with the program. The producer, do we have you here? It appears the producer is not here, and I can see that one of our guests has joined us, Mr. Brian Kayongo, and I can also see Francis Chipili. He's actually with us, and definitely we've got to go straight up into the program, and we'll do get to break for a commercial later on in the show, considering that our guests are here. Brian Kayongo, sir, good evening.
Good evening, Chaza. Good evening, Lance, and my colleague Francis. It is good to be here.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Francis, Mr. Francis Chipili.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much.
We are really delighted to host you on the show. And tonight we are looking at citizen solidarity in the fight against corruption. First of all, as you get to represent Generation Takeover, who would like to know what this organization is. What is Generation Takeover?
Okay, thanks so much. So Generation Takeover is actually a movement. It's a movement of different young people and new generation, the post-independence comrades. It was formed in the spirit of actually emancipating, our involvement and our participation in the civic space. But the bigger vision of Generation Takeover is actually to ensure that the post-independence, citizens are able to actually take over from the pre-independence leaders. You know that this country was actually at some point in 1964, when we were getting independence, had a generation of young people that led it for 27 years, and we saw what they were able to do. So as such, I think for the past 50 years plus, we've really given a lot of chance to the pre-independence comrades and leaders to actually take this country to the next level from independence to date. And we continue to see that each political party that takes power, from UNIP to MMD to PF and now UPND, we've continued to see the continuous sidelining of the post-independence generation, sidelining in terms of economic activities, in terms of leadership, in terms of many other things. We've seen a situation where in each political party that takes over power, the same generation has continued to get empowered. The same generation, despite the age, they've actually clinged onto power without really recognizing the role of the post-independence generation. So what we are actually aspiring as a movement is to actually create space and mobilize you, the post-independence generation, to be able to take a center stage in the governance of this country and make mistakes that others, we cannot afford a situation where a generation that has actually, that will not be there tomorrow, keeps on making decisions for tomorrow without the involvement of those that will actually be affected by those decisions. I'll give you the example of debt. There have been a lot of decisions on borrowing beyond our means, but we know that these people that are actually continuously leaving us in debt, this debt burden will be the ones that and our children to actually shoulder this debt burden going forward. So what we are saying now is, as a movement, is to awaken the post-independence generation and say, it is our time. Beyond UPND, we want to see an uprising of the post-independence generation to be able to take the realms of power and be able to take this country to the next level with the 21st century skills and 21st century ways of thinking. We have the numbers, we have the education, we have the experience, and we have the vision for this country as well. So we don't want to rally behind. We don't want to continue seeing our grandparents, who've retired, being pulled out of retirement again, given to continue, deciding for this country. When a lot of us young people and those that are actually coming behind us are actually in the streets with the knowledge, with the technology and so on, but they don't have the space for them to be able to actually contribute to the development of the country. So generational takeover means just that there should be the post-independence generation to be able to take forward the decisions and development of this country politically.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chipili, I would like to know in what capacity are you coming as you represent Generation Takeover? You can just give us a synopsis, and also in what capacity is Mr. Kayongo?
So I'm actually a member of Generation Takeover.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chipili.
Yes, I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Zambian Institute of Governance and Civil Liberties Advocacy Platform, a civil society organization that is interested in works with the youth as well as the underprivileged citizens in Zambia, as well as underserved citizens. So this initiative actually marries into our core functions. Dr. Banda is one of the people that we've worked with in various programs, and so he invited me to this program so that we can create synergy and see how we can advance the cause of inclusion as far as citizens, especially the youth that have been left behind by politicians, only to be remembered during a campaign and when politicians are seeking office. So that's how I come in.
Thank you so much. And considering that from the organizations that you come, you are of the view that the youth should be embraced in active governance, and also the positions must be granted to the youths, as opposed to actually so much cling onto the people that have been there for a long time. I would say the old. And we saw an appointment for one of the people that have been there, and some people have been against such appointments. I would like to find out from you, do you think the retirement age as we stand is good enough, or should we reduce it or have it increased? What is your viewpoint on this one?
Well, as far as the retirement age, currently in Zambia is about 65 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And when you look at even the practice in other countries, like for instance, the United States, you find that you probably find old politicians still holding on to office. But the difference between them and us here in Zambia is that there is inclusion as far as the youth or the youthful or emerging leaders. But the tendency that is in Africa, and particularly in Zambia, is that the emphasis tends to be the inclusion of old people. And should the retirement age be reduced or be changed? I don't think so. I think 65 is good enough. What is important is that government must have a policy where there's no discrimination of any sort. Recently, there was an announcement. There's been a recruitment exercise that government has been undertaking, trying to recruit health workers as well as teachers. And unfortunately, there was a pronouncement where they were saying those who are over 45 years old they would not be considered for appointment, which is quite unfortunate. If you have a retirement age put at 65 years old, and then you call out those who are 45 and above not to apply, it doesn't make any logical sense. So I don't think it's important to change the retirement age. What is important is that we have to enact laws that can bring equity, and there is no discrimination of any sort, either reverse or otherwise kind of discrimination. 65, we had another appointment where a former son of our first president was appointed in foreign mission to serve Zambia, and that man is over 75 years old, which is quite unfortunate, because that is taking away the opportunity for the young people or the youth to learn leadership. When our country just got independence in 1964, our founding fathers, Dr. Kaunda as the first president, he had the grace to appoint young leaders. We had Honorable Venon Mwanga and others who were at that time 21 years old, but they were included in governance matters. And so it's important that this generation also learns from our history and see that moving forward, we begin to include the youth, not just use the youth in during campaigns and using them to throw stones or cause anarchy and political violence. We need to use the youth in a manner that would cultivate civility in politics. We need to use the youth in a manner that will enable them be entrepreneurs and in a manner that will enable them contribute to our society and advance Zambia so that we can reach that great height that each one of us as citizens are aspiring to take Zambia to.
Thank you so much. And having said so, what we are then submitting is that when the retirement age was changed, increased from 45 to 50 as normal, and actually 60 as normal and 65 as late retirement age, there remained a lacuna in the NAPSA Act, which provides that for one to qualify for benefits, such a one must have contributed a minimum of 180 months, which is 15 years. So we needed to see this change also for it to be increased to at least 20 years, because retirement age was increased by 5 years. What is your viewpoint, Mr. Kayongo?
Well, so yeah, I think the increase of age of retirement and so on, for me, I see it beyond just it being a very good thing, but also it is, for me, a selfish decision, because if you ask me, there are other roles which our parents can play after retirement than actually continuing to work. The labor sector, our labor sector is actually very saturated with quite older and non-productive citizens, and a lot of citizens that are productive, that are in their productive years, are actually languishing in the streets without jobs. So with that said, I feel that it was going to be fair if we created an opportunity where somebody can serve in the civil service for at least 20 years. That is quite a lot of time, and while they still have the strength, they can actually they are able to actually pursue their own economic agenda, or their own economic activities, looking after the family, doing the farming and so on, so that then they create space for more productive age group to be able to actually pursue civil service and other jobs that require a lot of active mind and so on, so that then there's continue it like that. But what we've seen is that
thank you so much. Sorry, I'll cut you short, and it's quite interesting. I'll spare this for another discussion. Retirement age. What should we do? Should we maintain it? Should we reduce it? Or should we increase it? That will be a discussion for another day. But tonight, getting now into the nitty-gritties of the show, citizens' solidarity in the fight against corruption. I'd like to find out from you, as a country, where do we stand as regards the fight against corruption? Francis.
Yes. First of all, corruption is a bad practice, especially like in Zambia. because it takes away the much needed resources that we can use to advance the cause of the common good for the country. The resources that is needed in developing and opening up the rural countries of the rural parts of the country. But unfortunately, not just in the current administration, but I think also in the previous administration, usually when politicians are in the opposition and they are seeking office, they tend to, bring out these issues of corruption intensely and promise that they will fight the scourge of corruption with all the energy that is needed. But as soon as they are given that opportunity to govern, and as soon as they form government, we tend to see a shift in the approach in the fight against corruption. We see that the fight against corruption is not fairly executed. We find that the fight against corruption then becomes a tool to persecute would-be political opponents. And we see that sometimes the people that could be in the ruling party who are engaged in corruption activities, they tend to be, given a blind eye, so to say. Not until they leave office, that's when they start being, followed or being taken to court. So if we are serious as a country and the people in the fight against corruption, we must ensure that the fight is not just being targeted at those that are in the opposition. The fight against corruption must target each and every citizens, from politicians, non-politicians, from the private sector, and the NGO sectors, so that we are all stakeholders, and so we must play a critical role in ensuring that the stage of corruption is totally eliminated, or at least maybe reduced. We must attain at least 90% and maybe 95% corruption-free society. That way, we'll find that these scarce resources that the government needs would be, directed towards those beneficial programs that we need to implement, to direct those resources to developmental projects. So for us as an institute, we like to call upon these politicians that they must never use the fight against corruption to target only individuals or companies that are not aligned with them. They must fight corruption in a fair and just manner, and they must never interfere with the institution, the governance institutions, such as the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Drug Enforcement Commission. They must not interfere in their operations, so that these institutions must have their autonomy or the independence to run and investigate and prosecute would-be offenders or those people that are found wanting. That way, the Zambian people have the confidence in this institution. The Zambian people also have confidence in the politicians when they start prosecuting even those opponents. Because when the fight is just one-sided, then the people, even if government has a good cause, people tend to believe that government is just using the fight just to, to target political opponents.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Right now, I'd like to get it from you. There's been an uproar from the citizens, from the civil society, as regards some of the outcomes from the corruption investigations. Some people have been disappointed due to the outcomes. What is your viewpoint? What is the reaction from yourselves that are coming from the civic organizations? The outcomes of corruption investigations, are you pleased with them?
Well, to some extent, yes, but not quite, because the fight, like I pointed out before, it tends to be viewed as targeting opponents. What we want to see is, for instance, there's been cases where current government officials have been engaged in questionable practices that should have attracted the interest of the law enforcement institutions. But those have been kind of ignored. And so that does not build confidence. So what we want to do is, what we want to see is, we want to see government build confidence in the people, and also confidence in the institution. So in short, we want to see more. We want to see a just and fair fight against corruption, both in the ruling administration as well as outside the ruling administration.
All right, Mr. Kayongo, are you there?
Yes.
Please
yes,
give us
yes.
your viewpoint. Do you think the fight that is being put across by the government against corruption, we are in the right track? The investigations that have so far been done and the outcomes. What is your position?
Yeah, we realize that the mistakes that we've made as citizens is to actually leave this fight to government, politicians, and the law enforcement officers without declaring interest in terms of how what direction it should actually take. So the initiative to actually create this solidarity around the fight against corruption is basically to say to the government, to say, as citizens, we want the fight against corruption to be genuine. This should not just be a political rhetoric. We've seen in the past during the MMD that there were quite a lot of corruption cases, which actually ended up to be nothing at all. Nothing. We didn't see significant arrests or recovery of stolen money and property. And we don't want to take chances this time around by just leaving this to those in government to take alone. Citizens need to actually come up and provide the required solidarity with very specific messages in terms of what our expectations are. Beyond what this government, for example, promised when they were getting government, we need now to also follow through how they are doing it now, the legal framework around how they are doing it, and if there's need for change in terms of the legal framework, for example, around getting the criminals that are found wanting scot-free, where the Anti-Corruption Act allows for settlements, for example. We need to voice out in terms of what are our expectations in terms of such kind of legal framework, because we've seen that there's an inequality in the administration of laws and legal framework in Zambia, where those that have money, those that are privileged, are let scot-free after stealing. You and me today, if you are found stealing in ShopRite or maybe a chicken, they will not only grab that chicken from you, they will also sentence you for stealing. But we've seen a trend where people that have actually admitted that they stole from the public have been given some kind of, relief to actually become free citizens. They are looming freely because of the legal framework that we have. So what we are saying and what we are actually putting forward is that there must be an accompaniment of solidarity to the fight against corruption, with specific demands and messages to the government in terms of what citizens expect of this fight and how the administration of the legal framework of the existing laws needs to be, and whether we need to actually change certain legal frameworks that exist now to ensure that the fight against corruption is given, is given the strength it deserves to deter future, future politicians that are intending to steal, or future culprits from doing so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Right.
For now, ladies and gentlemen, we shall break for a commercial, and just after that, I'll give it to my co-host Lance to take over and get to ask one or two questions from the guests that we have. Then after that, we shall invite the public to join us through messages and also coming live on the show. This is Meet Your Leaders. And tonight we are joined by Mr. Brian Kayongo and Francis Chipili that are representing Generation Takeover. And we're having a good time right here. Your hosts, Chaza and Lance. See you on the other side as Lance gets to take over right here on Meeting Your Leaders.
Ubuntu ninshira iyo abantu basenderamo ifyo umuntu afiire okuba n'efyo afiire okukita n'efyo afiire okwikaliramo ubuntu.
All right, so thank you so much for still staying and watching Meet Your Leaders. We are glad that you are still part of the program and definitely looking forward to having your comments. So you can send your comments as I will be able to read them live on the show. And definitely we are providing the studio link where you can just click on it and then get to join us live in the studios. Now, Mr. Kayongo, or allow me to call you Brian. Speaking about the fight against corruption, many a times that it is perceived to say it's only politicians that are corrupt, or the fight against corruption must be, if we see former political leaders or former politicians from a former ruling party, get questioned by the SEC, or they are taken to court for offenses like, acquiring property through suspected proceeds of crime. Who commits, who is corrupt? Or can we say it's only politicians that are corrupt and the fight against corruption should only be centered on politicians?
I think this is where actually things get where both the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Auditor General, really need to actually, help us in terms of how we end up, fixing politicians and not controlling officers and those that actually deal with the actual administration of public resources. But if you look at it and you look at some of the cases that we've seen recently, I think the exposure, most of the exposure came through the Financial Intelligence Center. If you had time to read the Financial Intelligence Center reports, you'll find that there have been a lot of illicit money passing through politicians' accounts. And I remember that in the last regime, the former president actually confessed that most of my ministers, have a lot of deposits, going through the banks and so on. But also, you realize that most of the time you will have politicians who join politics within the period of 5 years. You find that they are acquiring very expensive property, and they dish out a lot of money beyond their normal income before they joined politics, or when they are actually serving as either minister, members of parliament, or any other public office. But my view is that there's need to actually have a system that should identify real culprits beyond politicians. Also looking at controlling officers. And I'm happy that during this period we are seeing for example, that permanent secretaries, former permanent secretaries are also being put to task. Former secretary to the Treasury are being put to task. We want to see this being castigated to even lower positions of directors, head of departments, and so on. So for me, I think there should be a systematic check of public office holders in terms of the income they have, declaration of the assets and the income they have, and how they are progressing versus what they are earning, you know. And this issue also of having politicians declare their wealth or their worth immediately they are appointed, so that then people on an annual basis they can continue declaring, so people are able to see how they are, you know, how they are actually, you know, getting wealthy, or how much they are worthy in between the period when they are actually appointed to the period when they leave office. So I think it is the systems that needs to really be improved and so on. But in my view, I think what facilitates most of information about politicians is the careless way in which politicians display their wealth, and also how they from nowhere earn so much wealth from the time they are elected to the time they leave office.
Okay, Brian, if maybe I can take you in this direction. Many a times that in the public courts of opinions through social media and all these other different mediums, we have called people corrupt, maybe without even having evidence, without having proper evidence to show that this person is corrupt. And when these cases are taken to court, we see a different outcome, and we cry foul to say the courts are not doing their job. Maybe probably they are favoring this type of a person or that. Kindly take us through, if you know, since you are from the organization that talks about generation change. So obviously we are talking about changing the mindset of a youth to understand governance and understand processes of how certain things ought to turn out or come around in the country. What are the processes of somebody being found guilty of corruption, maybe in the presence of there is evidence or there is no evidence, but depending that you are just dependent on social media?
Yeah, so I think this perception has been given by politicians themselves. Firstly, by politicians. Secondly, by our own institutions. I'll start by the politicians themselves. For example, when President Edgar Lungu, former President Edgar Lungu, said that there's corruption among my ministers, you know, that was a sweeping statement and is a public figure, and that message went to the citizens, and you expect reactions, obviously, from the citizens, you know. When a leader says, my cabinet ministers are corrupt, there's a lot of illicit deposits going on and so on, then that just automatically triggers reactions from citizens, even without evidence, because I mean, whenever they see that, whenever they say that,
Brian, just a minute. Don't you think that was just, yes, he was the head of state, but he just made a statement without providing proof and evidence to say, yes, they are depositing such monies in their either offshore accounts or in their local accounts?
Yes, actually, that is where I was going to say. We have the similar mistake now by the current president, where he actually pronounced that my ministers are being taught how to steal by the previous regime and so on, without providing the details of who are those ministers and what exactly are they stealing and so on. So that that brings some kind of public outcry. It reinforces the suspicions which the public have over the leaders, and obviously for sure that these leaders are not living in isolation. They live among ourselves. We know them when they get in power. We know them when they are in power, and we see some changes that take place. For example, I will give you an example of politicians who do join politics, and they don't have anything, but from nowhere they start dishing huge amounts of money to citizens, and they start exposing so much property and so on. So obviously these become suspicions, but those suspicions are reinforced by statements from, for example, the president and other people who occupy strategic leadership positions to indicate that to actually indicate that there's corruption among their members or among their their workers. But that also is actually is also fueled by the reports that we get from Auditor General. For example, you see how much money is being misapplied and how much money is actually mentioned. Worse enough, the scenarios which the FIC reports present. So all these scenarios put together, and because it is put in public domain, fuels the anger among the citizens, and brings some kind of expectations from the leader to really make sure that they get to the root of this and so on. Now, imagine where you are told there are millions of kwachas. For example, the FTJ University scandal, where you are told to say $33 million was actually spent on this particular project and so on, and then you have arrests, and then you have those people acquitted and found that there is no case. But then look at the emphasis which this case was given, and how much money, taxpayers' money has actually been spent on such a project which is non-existent and so on. So this is what actually fuels anger, because we've not seen really actual, prosecution and ultimately, jailing of the perpetrators of this corruption.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. As we open the studio for people to join in and be part of the program, we advise that as you are coming in, you have 90 seconds for you to make your comments, so that you can also ask your question, make your comment, or simply express a view, because we would love to accommodate as many people as we can. Ruben, thank you so much. Good to know that you are watching, and at Typical PMC, I think I saw something like that. Thank you so much for watching. Now, as we are accommodating people, I think I would love this one question to be answered. The fight against corruption must be effective. Now, you are an organization that is championing citizens' solidarity in the fight against corruption. How effective can both the government and the SEC be in the fight against corruption if the SEC is not properly funded, and therefore you find that when they are pursuing this matter or investigating an issue, they have little resources. Maybe they don't have fuel. Maybe kandarama kebaba pasa ni kangono, and divaenda kuri uyu politician we that suspect as corrupt, and watch to offer a huge amount of money. So it turns that maybe there are some factors that are making SEC not to be effective, and therefore government seems to be failing in the fight against corruption. What should be done? What is your organization doing or calling upon to see the effectiveness fight of corruption?
Yeah, so from our side, I think it is really to understand, because we've heard all these stories about ACC not being well funded and so on, but I think we've not known really to what extent, because as far as we are concerned, as long as this institution exists, there's usually appropriation of resources. We've not seen during the presentation of the budget and when the Minister of Finance is actually presenting the budget and when Parliament is actually debating this particular budget and passing this budget, we've not heard so much on what deficit exists on ACC's budget currently. You know, we just hear in ACC is underfunded and so on, but to what extent we don't know. So there must be information in the public domain to what extent ACC is underfunded, so that our solidarity then can be informed by that, because we've tried to do some kind of research in terms of how much is the projection and how much they are actually receiving. We've not found something that we can use to argue that we are failing all these cases because ACC is actually 90% underfunded, for example. You know, in terms of qualifications, also we've not seen a comparison between ACC and another anti-corruption, you know, body maybe in South Africa or in Kenya that is doing well because of funding or because of certain skill set or because of maybe different in salary scales of the workers and so on. So the argument must be informed by data, and for us to really be able to actually pay that solidarity. Because I mean, this is, to work in anti-corruption, for me, it should be something that if I'm an investigator and so on, it should be something that should be where it should come from patriotism. Because no matter how much salary I'm given, if maybe an officer who is handling a case is getting 20,000 and they are offered the 100 million by somebody they are investigating, if they are not patriotic, no matter how much, even if you raise that salary to 50 pin, there will still be somebody out there to actually give out a kickback to ensure that you favor them. So it's the patriotism and the patriotism of the people within ACC to be able to say no to a bribe because they are actually getting less of the money. It's like police officers also. If everyone went with that to say, if you don't give, if you don't increase my salary or if you don't pay me well, then I'll actually receive a bribe from the people that I'm supposed to actually be prosecuting. That will compromise the whole system, because we also have other people like judges. We have in the system, we have prosecutors, we have so many other people that play different role in this whole process. So anti-corruption is just one of the institutions. DEC is just one of the institutions, but there are many other, players in this whole process. So if each one of those players is going to say no, because I'm not paid well, so that's the reason why I compromise and get a bribe, then we are not going to actually have a system that is going to fight corruption. But as I said, as citizens, we are ready to actually give the solidarity that is required for ACC and other law enforcement agencies to be able to fight corruption. But we need to argue this solidarity from an informed point of view. We need data. We need to actually argue with the data in our hands to say, this is how underfunded ACC or DEC is. This is how underfunded the judiciary, because it is also part and parcel of the system.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kayongo. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Lance. Greatly appreciated. All right, Mr. Producer, please bring on the messages. And if there are people that would like to join us live in the studio, you can bring them on, because we'll be winding down pretty soon. I'd like to find out if Mr. Chipili is back with us in the studio. He was having some hitch, and I cannot see him. Meanwhile, you can bring on Mary Walia right now, live in the studio. We hear what she has for us. Mary Walia. It appears still attempting to come live. Meanwhile, there's a message. Lance, you can take up the message, please.
All right, so this is coming from Mary Bwalia Chikamoneka. Here in Zambia, the issue of corruption is impossible to be shut, and it has spread around Zambia. Even in some things that we surely know that it doesn't bear corruption, we attempt in using corruption. Some take it as one of the way for achieving what they want to obtain. All right, Mama Chikamonika, thank you so much for coming through. And she continues to say, once the big offices are bribed, then the whole case is put to rest. No matter how the matter is serious, it will end up not going anywhere. Alachivi, people of Zambia. All right, Mama Chikamonika, once more, thank you so much for coming through. So you can continue sending your messages, and also we've provided the studio link in the comments box using whichever platform that you're watching us on. We are live on YouTube, that is Ubuntu Channel Zambia. We are also live on Facebook, Ubuntu Channel Zambia, and not forgetting also live on Twitter, it's Ubuntu Channel Zambia. So on all these platforms, we have provided for you the link. You can quietly click on it, come through into the studio, share your idea, comment, and of course, get to tell us what you think about the topic of discussion, which is citizen solidarity in the fight against corruption. All right, looks like Mr. Chipili is back. Mr. Chipili, thank you so much for coming back. And
no, thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, for now, I'd like to find out from Brian and Francis, what actions or activities have you lined up in the fight against corruption? I heard you clearly indicated that as citizens, as the civil organizations, we must come in and help the government in the fight against corruption. What are the actions or activities that you have lined up as in helping the government to fight corruption?
Yeah, so we've lined up quite a lot, and this is not a one-off solidarity action. It will be a continuous action. We'll start with this month. We'll start with a protest. A protest march will be held to Parliament, and the idea is actually for us to be able to actually, it will be like a rally where we are going to actually encourage other citizens to actually give solidarity to the current government's move to fight corruption and commitment, because we realize that sometimes I think as citizens, if we become so relaxed that we are not actually providing the needed solidarity, leadership tends to actually slow down. We've had a lot of negative vibes around, no, this is just targeting who. We've heard about, no, this is tribal and so on. So those negative sentiments tend to actually, divert the attention of the leaders in terms of their commitment to fight corruption. But what we are saying is that we need to give this government the solidarity that it requires, while promoting, while actually sending the message to them in terms of how the corruption must be fought, in terms of what Francis was talking about, that it should not be selective. It should not only focus on, the people because they are opponents and so on, but it should be something that we should be able to say, we take forward, going forward, we take it as part of a continuous process. As we were saying, we need to actually reform our laws, we need to strengthen our systems, we need to ensure that, this is castigated beyond politicians, ensure that it is castigated down to every public office holder, including the private sector. because we can't say this corruption is only in government. This corruption is in NGOs, this corruption is in companies and so on, you know. So I think we need to reemphasize and give the strength to the government to actually fight this corruption. So some of the activities, as I mentioned, is basically periodic, you know, protests and rallies, nationwide mobilization of citizens wherever they are, and conscientization of citizens on what corruption means to this generation and the coming generation. Because, as I said, we don't want to take over a rotten country. We want to take over a country that we should be able to actually move to the next stage and hand over to the next generation. That is in one piece, not in pieces. So it will be ongoing protests and mobilization and you know, media engagement like this one. And we thank you for actually featuring us in this one. So this partnership is an ongoing partnership, but our first action is planned for the 30th of this month. Francis, when is the date again?
It is 31st.
31st of May.
31st of May, yes, so the last day of May.
Yeah. So
okay. Right now, I would like to bring in Francis to give us, you know, some more information as regards the same protests march that you are scheduled to have, and give us a bit more information about the same. Do you have the permit? Is everything set? The date, day, and time?
The date is set. We have made quite good progress. We've done the COVID requirements. We've made payments for the COVID requirements, and so our colleagues have also submitted a request for the permit to the police. As you know, in Zambia, for any public gathering, you need to have a police clearance, and so we are hoping that the police, being that the protest that we'll do is a peaceful protest, and so we don't anticipate any challenges or difficulties from the police as not granting us the permission to go ahead with that protest. So we are making good progress, and we're looking forward to engaging the citizens as well as the media.
Okay, thank you so much for that insight as regards the protest march. All right, for now, I would like the producer to bring in if there's any message that we can read out, or there's anyone that would like to join us in the studio as we get to conclude. So for now, it's unfortunate that we lost Francis for a bit of time. So I'd like to give Francis a little bit of time, a minute or so, to give us probably one of the things that you could have loved to bring out right here on the show as we get to conclude. Francis, please give us what you probably could have loved to share with us right on the show.
Thank you, Chaza. What I would like to share is that it's an appeal to all the citizens of Zambia to be vigilant, to be engaged in the fight against corruption. And also because corruption, as we have pointed out, does not just involve our politicians. We have different levels of corruption activities. There's corrupt activities on the roads, traffic corruption. And so there's no small corruption or big corruption. So what we want to do is to cultivate a culture of corruption free. And so we'd like to urge all the citizens to be actively engaged in the fight, and also to help government fight the scourge, but also would like to appeal to the politicians that both in the ruling party as well as in the opposition, that they must not politicize the fight against corruption, because doing so is a serious service to our country, is a serious service to this generation, as well as the next generation. What we want to see is we want to have all our resources being utilized in the manner that will ensure that our country attains the respect that it had when we got independence. Zambia is endured with a lot of mineral resources, a lot of we've got fertile land, we've got water bodies that we can utilize and position ourselves as a food basket, both in the region as well as globally. We can only attain that if all the resources, the scarce resources that the country has, are directed and utilized prudently. And so, for politicians, must never ever make the fight against corruption as a political tool or use it as politicize it. And so the citizens also equally must be engaged, actively participants. If citizens are alert corruption, it will be easy for government to actually fight corruption, because then citizens becomes the whistleblower.
So sorry to cut you short. I can see someone joining us live on the studio. Let's bring them on. Wallace there, Mioba.
Hello, Chaza. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Topic.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, lovely topic that you're having it tonight, and absolutely, I agree with what the gentlemen are doing to show the government that they are actually with them. If they manage to do the staging of the rally that they want to do, that would be great. But what I want to find out really is the officers on ACC, are they really fully trained to dig out the information so that when the cases go to court, they are not thrown out for no enough evidences. Because this is really fueling a lot of citizens, because the cases, we know some of them very, very straightforward, and we see acquittals. It's really, really annoying. So I don't know if the training is also considered for these people that we appoint in ACC, so that at least when they go and they dig out, the information should be thick enough to help the judiciary to actually, apprehend and, arrest these people. Because if they go there with scant information, yes, the court will throw it because it's not evident enough. So I don't know if the training, if they are really, really good investigators, because when they go there and they start to see the things, they should have full evidences for the people to be, arrested. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate Mr. Mioba for joining us right here. That's a question that is talking about the training. Do the investigators or the officers from ACC receive adequate training to actually handle such cases and investigate them thoroughly? Okay, my producer is actually giving me a signal that we have to do a wrap. So time is not our best ally. So for now, I'd like to have your concluding remarks, 1 minute each, Mr. Kayongo and also Mr. Chipili. Let's start with Mr. Kayongo.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, I think the question that he has raised, as I conclude, is very important. For me, it's not about the training; it's about patriotism, because we've seen cases, for example, where a goes to court and tends to say no. I don't know about this case, where they actually tend. We heard about an ACC officer who went and, who was supposed to give evidence and went to court and said the other way around. Others just don't appear, files get misplaced and so on. So it's all corruption. Corruption entrenches beyond just other government departments and so on, but even within anti-corruption commission. So if they're investigating me, they have all the facts, and then they give me money, and I'm the one who has that case, and then I just disappear, or I go and say something parallel to what the truth is, and then the case just is dismissed in court. So I feel we need patriotism. We need citizens to keep pushing. We need systems to be put in place and improved. And we need the legal framework to be improved as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Under 1 minute, please.
Yes, I think Mr. Miova, both Mr. Miova and Mr. Kayongo pointed out quite well. I think what is important is for the Anti-Corruption Commission not to get excited or to try and carry out these prosecutions in the media. They need to do much more professional jobs. Of course, they have the duty to inform the citizens on the progress they are making in those cases, but they must professionally prosecute these matters so that those cases are rabbit-proof, sealed, so that when they go to court, they're able to secure a conviction, and that will send a very strong message to would-be perpetrators of corruption. But also, even those officers, they must also be aware that they also can be investigated for corruption, investigated and prosecuted for corruption. So we'd like to appeal to anti-corruption officials not to engage themselves in corrupt activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Francis Chipili and Mr. Brian Kayongo for joining us right here on Meeting Your Leaders right here. And today we were looking at citizen solidarity in the fight against corruption. We greatly appreciate your time coming right here to join us on the show. And we look forward to even inviting you next time. To you, the viewers, we greatly appreciate your time. Time has not been on our side. A lot more to be discussed. Remember, this comes your way every Wednesday at 21 hours. Till next time, it's been Chaza and Lance. God bless you. We are out of here.